right, let's jump into another deep dive. We've got a case today that could really shake things up in the music industry.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be a big one.
We're looking at a lawsuit by Jermaine Jevon Howard.
Okay.
And he's going up against Sean Combs, P. Diddy.
Yeah, did he?
And Bad Boy Records.
Bye-Bye Entertainment.
Bad Boy Entertainment.
Arista Records, the whole shebang.
The whole thing, yeah.
Yep.
So we're going off of a transfer order from the United States District Court.
Right.
Now, I know that might not sound super exciting.
Yeah.
But trust me, it's the beginning of what could be a really big deal.
It really is.
So before we go too far, can you give our listener a little background on Jermaine Jevon Howard?
Yeah, sure.
What's he all about?
So Jermaine Jevon Howard is a resident of Buffalo, New York, and he's actually representing himself in this lawsuit.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is interesting in and of itself.
Yeah.
He's basically accusing Sean Combs and the record companies of some serious offenses going all the way back to 1998.
1998, wow.
Yeah, we're talking about an alleged attack that took place in a recording studio in Buffalo.
Okay.
And violations of Howard's intellectual property rights.
So hold on, 1998, that was like over 25 years ago?
Long time ago.
What's the deal with that? Why is this coming out now?
Well, there could be a lot of reasons for that. I mean, legally speaking, it could have taken Howard a long time to put together his evidence or to like even find a lawyer.
Right.
There should be legal strategies at play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't really know the specifics because we're not really involved in the case, obviously.
Yeah.
It's really not that uncommon for cases like this to take years, sometimes even decades.
Okay, so let's go back to this transfer order.
Okay.
What does that even mean?
So basically the case, it was filed in the wrong court.
Oh.
So the judge basically transferred it to the proper place, to the proper jurisdiction.
Okay.
Which is the United States District Court for the Western District of New York.
Right.
Makes sense because the alleged incident happened in Buffalo.
Right, right. So it seems like we have a real David versus Goliath situation here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, you have Jermaine Howard, he's representing himself,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going up against, I mean, these industry giants, Sean Combs, all these huge record labels.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges that someone faces, legally speaking, when they go up against something like that?
Well, it's definitely an uphill battle when
Yeah.
you have big corporations, individuals with tons of money.
Right.
They usually have access to, the best legal teams.
Mm-hmm.
And these teams can really use all sorts of tactics to delay or even just completely derail a case.
Oh, wow.
They can file motions, they can ask for extensions,
Right.
they can just bury the plaintiff in so much paperwork,
Wow.
hoping that that'll just exhaust their resources or just their willingness to even fight.
Okay, so this transfer order, what does this mean for the case moving forward?
Right.
Is this a win for Howard?
It's definitely a step in the right direction. It's more of a procedural win, I would say.
Okay.
It doesn't actually guarantee that he's going to win the case.
Gotcha.
It just means that now the case is in the right court to actually be heard.
So this is just the beginning.
This is just the beginning. Yeah, both sides are probably going to be going back and forth, making arguments, doing a lot of legal maneuvering before we even get to a trial.
So there's a lot more to uncover here.
Oh, yeah.
We've got this alleged attack, intellectual property claims, this huge time gap.
Right.
And we still don't even know, what actually went down in that studio.
Exactly, yeah.
Back in 98. What kind of evidence do you think is going to be important?
Well, Howard's going to need to, really bring the receipts.
Yeah.
He's going to have to show evidence to back up his claims. So this could be anything, like witness statements,
Okay.
medical records, if there were any injuries,
Yeah.
or anything that proves that his intellectual property was used without his permission. But he's also going to have to explain, why this is all coming out now.
Right, right.
After all this time.
That's a big one. And what about Sean Combs and the record companies?
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of defense could they even put up?
So they have a few options. They could try to discredit Howard.
Okay.
They could question, if he's telling the truth or if he's reliable.
Uh-huh.
They could come up with their own evidence that contradicts his claims.
Yeah.
They could also argue that the statute of limitations has expired.
The what?
The statute of limitations.
What's that?
So that's basically a law that sets a time limit for, when you can file certain types of lawsuits.
Okay.
So it really depends on what kind of case it is and what state it's in. But in this situation, Combs' lawyers could argue that too much time has passed, since that incident in 1998
Right.
for the lawsuit to even be valid.
Yeah.
So this would be a major point of back and forth between the two sides. And the judge would have to decide if that law actually applies in this specific case.
Okay, so we're already starting to see how complex this all is.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
we've got these legal hurdles, the time gap. Both sides need to bring, like, some serious evidence.
Exactly.
But let's zoom out a little bit.
Okay.
What if these accusations are true?
Yeah.
I mean, this could have huge repercussions for the whole music industry, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
If this goes Howard's way and the court rules in his favor, it could really change the game. It could empower tons of other artists.
Yeah.
You know, they might feel braver about coming forward with their own stories, with their own claims.
Right.
This could lead to, like, a wave of lawsuits against record labels.
Wow.
Yeah, and then the record companies, they might have to completely rethink their contracts,
Right.
their royalty practices,
Ugh.
how they handle intellectual property in general.
So we're talking about a potential power shift here.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
It could force more transparency and accountability within the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, labels might become way more careful about how they do business,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to these contracts
Right.
and who owns what.
Wow, this could be really big.
Yeah, this case could be like a major turning point
Yeah.
for artists and how their rights are actually protected.
It makes you wonder how many artists are out there
Mm.
who might have similar experiences, but they've been too afraid to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the reasons why someone might not want to sue a huge record label?
Well, the music industry, it's a tough world to navigate.
Yeah.
It's super competitive.
Right.
And a lot of artists rely on these labels,
Yeah.
you know, to get their music out there, to advance their careers.
Yeah.
But going up against a major label or a figure like Sean Combs,
Right.
I mean, that can hurt an artist's reputation,
Yeah.
their relationships in the industry, even their chances of success.
So you're saying there's a fear of retaliation.
Absolutely.
And there's also, I mean, think about the money.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, legal battles, they can be really expensive.
Absolutely.
And they take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So many artists, especially those just starting out, they just don't have the money to even consider that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you were saying, it's David versus Goliath.
Yeah.
But David doesn't even have a slingshot.
Right.
So it seems like the whole system could just silence people
Yeah.
if they feel like they've been wronged.
Exactly.
Going back to Jermaine Howard's case, what is the biggest thing that stands out to you so far?
Well, one thing that really jumps out at me is the lack of specifics.
What do you mean?
Well, we don't actually know much about this attack that happened in 1998.
Oh, right.
And we don't know a lot about the intellectual property violations either.
Yeah.
I mean, those are like the main points of this whole lawsuit.
Right.
So without knowing those details, it's kind of hard to tell how strong Howard's case is
Right.
or what legal moves would actually work best.
Right. So this transfer order, is it kind of like we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg here?
Exactly.
It feels like it's raising more questions than it's answering.
Yeah, it really does.
What else should we be watching for as this case moves forward?
I think it's going to be interesting to see what Sean Combs does next.
Okay.
His lawyers are going to have to respond to these allegations in some way.
Mhm.
They might release a statement or file an official response,
Okay.
and their strategy is going to be really telling.
Okay.
Are they going to try to throw the whole case out?
Right.
Are they going to focus on, like, technical legal details, like the statute of limitations that we were talking about?
Yeah.
Or are they going to directly address the accusations themselves?
Right.
Every move that they make is going to give us clues about how they plan to defend themselves.
So it's like a chess match.
Kind of, yeah.
They're going back and forth with these moves.
Yeah.
What about the impact on Sean Combs's career,
Right.
his reputation?
Yeah.
I mean, even if he's found not liable, could this still hurt him?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely possible.
Oh.
It doesn't really matter what happens in court.
Yeah.
Just being associated with a lawsuit like this can hurt your image,
Yeah.
especially when you're a public figure.
Right.
The accusations themselves, even if they're not proven true,
Yeah.
they can create all this negative publicity, and that can really change how people see you. I mean, we've seen this happen so many times before.
It makes you think about how public opinion works.
Right.
I mean, it's different from what actually happens in the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
These days, it feels like public figures are held to this completely different standard,
For sure. Yeah.
especially with social media.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, everything just gets blown up.
Mm-hmm.
But even if Combs manages to clear his name legally, this whole thing just brings up so much.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that the music industry has had so many problems.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so many stories about exploitation,
Yeah.
power imbalances.
Right. Right.
And it's been going on for decades.
Absolutely.
So this case is like bringing some of those issues to light.
Yeah.
I mean, these artists, especially new artists,
Mm,
they're often in a tough spot.
yeah.
They're pressured to sign these contracts that aren't fair.
Hmm.
They might have to give up control of their music.
It's a problem.
So what can we do about it?
Oh,
I mean, is there any way to make the music industry fairer for everybody?
well, there's definitely a growing movement pushing for change.
Yep.
Organizations like the Future of Music Coalition, they're trying to make things better.
Okay.
The Songwriters of North America, they're all advocating for reforms.
Yeah.
You know, they want better royalty rates, more protection for artists' rights.
And what about the artists themselves?
Yeah.
I mean, what can they do to protect themselves?
It's all about knowledge.
Yeah.
Artists need to understand their rights, you know. They
Right.
got to read those contracts carefully
Yeah.
and get legal help when they need it.
Yeah.
There are some good resources out there to help, like the Recording Academy, the Artists' Rights Alliance.
So this case is like a wake-up call for the industry.
Yeah,
I mean, it's time to really face these issues
absolutely.
and make a system that respects the artists.
Exactly. And it's not all about lawsuits.
Yeah.
It's about shifting the culture, you
Yeah.
know, creating an industry that's more ethical,
Right.
sustainable, you
Yeah.
know, one that benefits everybody involved,
Yeah.
from the people creating the music to the people listening to it.
Right. So for our listeners out there, why should they care about this?
Well,
Even if they're not musicians.
yeah, you know, this case goes beyond just music.
Okay.
It's about power, it's about fairness, it's about holding people accountable,
Mm-hmm.
and that's relevant to everyone.
Right.
It reminds us that even in these industries that we admire, there can be a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to pay attention, to be informed consumers,
Yeah.
to think about where our entertainment comes from,
Right.
and to support those artists who are fighting for what's right.
It's about asking questions,
Yeah,
doing your research,
exactly.
supporting organizations that are working to make a difference.
Mhm.
Any last thoughts for our deep divers?
Well, this case, it's far from over.
Right?
I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens next
Yeah.
and what kind of impact it has on the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I encourage everyone to stay informed, keep those conversations going, and use your voice to make the music world a better place.
I love it. That's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
This case just shows how these legal fights can have ripple effects everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Stay curious, everyone. Keep learning, and join us again for another deep dive into something that really matters.
Absolutely.
It's like we're talking about two different things, right?
Yeah.
The court of public opinion
Mm-hmm.
and the actual court. It's kind of a weird thing to think about.
It is.
But even if Combs, even if he's cleared in court,
Yeah.
this case brings up a bigger issue.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right. It's like this reminder
Yeah.
that the music industry has had all these problems
Oh, for sure.
for such a long time, right? Like exploitation,
Mhm.
power imbalances.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a new thing.
It's been going on forever.
So this case is really shining a light on that,
Yeah.
especially when you think about artists just starting out.
Right.
They're in such a vulnerable position.
Mm-hmm.
They might feel pressured to sign these contracts that aren't in their best interest,
Mm-hmm.
or they might have to give up control of their music.
It's a huge problem.
So what can we even do about it?
Right.
I mean, is there any way to create an industry that's more fair?
I mean, there are people fighting for that.
Okay.
There are organizations like the Future of Music Coalition,
Yeah.
the Songwriters of North America. They're all advocating for reforms,
Yeah.
better royalty rates,
Yeah.
stronger protections for artists' rights.
What about the artists?
Yeah.
I mean, what can they do to protect themselves?
Well, they need to be informed.
They need to know their rights, understand the contracts,
Yeah.
and get legal help if they need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are resources out there like the Recording Academy,
Mhm.
the Artists' Rights Alliance.
So this case is like a wake-up call.
Absolutely. It's time to make a change.
Yeah. It's time to create a system that respects artists.
Exactly. And it's not all about lawsuits and contracts.
Right.
We need a cultural shift,
Mm.
make the industry more ethical,
Right.
more sustainable, and
Yeah.
make sure that everyone benefits, the creators, the listeners, everybody.
Right. Right. So for our listeners out there, why should they care about this?
Yeah.
Even if they're not musicians or part of the industry.
You know, this case is bigger than music.
Okay.
It's about power dynamics. It's about fairness. It's about accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that affect all of us.
Right.
It reminds us that every industry has its problems, even the ones we love.
Yeah.
It's important to be aware, to be informed, to be conscious about where our entertainment comes from,
Right.
and to support the artists who are fighting for their rights.
So it's about asking questions,
Yep.
doing your research,
Exactly.
supporting those organizations that are trying to make things better. So any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Well, this is just the beginning. This
Right.
case isn't over yet.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens next.
Mhm.
I encourage everyone to stay informed, keep those conversations going, and use your voice to make a difference.
I love that. That's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
This case really shows that even the smaller legal disputes, they can have a huge impact.
Right.
So stay curious, keep learning, and join us again for another deep dive into a topic that matters.
It's like, with social media, it feels like there's this whole other trial going on
Oh, yeah, totally.
in the court of public opinion. It's a lot for these public figures to deal with. But this case, even if Combs is cleared in court.
It brings up these bigger issues about the music industry.
Absolutely.
We're talking about exploitation, power imbalances, all those things.
Yeah, and it's not new.
Right,
It's
exactly.
been a problem for a long time.
And this case is kind of putting a spotlight on all of that,
Exactly. Yeah.
especially for those artists who are just starting out,
Yeah.
They're vulnerable. They might feel pressured to sign bad contracts, give up control of their music. It's a real issue.
Absolutely.
So what can we even do to make things better? Can we create a fairer music industry?
Well, a lot of people are working towards that.
Okay.
There are organizations like the Future of Music Coalition and the Songwriters of North America,
Yeah.
They're pushing for better royalty rates, stronger protections for artists' rights.
And what about the artists themselves? What can they do?
Well, knowledge is key, right? They need to understand their rights, be careful with contracts, and get legal help when they need it. There are resources out there, like the Recording Academy has some initiatives, and there's the Artists' Rights Alliance.
So this case, it feels like a wake-up call for the industry.
Yeah, it is.
It's time to face these problems and build a system that truly values and respects artists.
Exactly. And it's not just about contracts and lawsuits. It's about changing the culture of the industry.
Yeah.
Making it more ethical, sustainable, where everybody benefits, the creators, the listeners,
Right. So for our listeners out there, why should they care about this case, even if they're not musicians?
This goes beyond just music.
Okay.
This is about power, fairness, accountability, and those things matter in every industry. It shows us that even industries we love, they have problems, they have things that need to change, so we need to be aware, be conscious consumers, and support those who are fighting for what's right.
So it's about asking those questions, doing the research, supporting those organizations, fighting for change. Any last thoughts for our listeners before we wrap things up?
Well, like we've said, this case, it's not over. Keep an eye on it. Stay informed. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out and what impact it has on the music world.
I agree. It's definitely a case to watch. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive.
Yeah.
But like we always say, stay curious, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.